Right. Now, all this time we were playing along with pixels, isn't it? Picture elements. We were editing, we were creating, but they all ended up as pictures. So we either save them as PSD files or JPEG files or anything for that matter, right? Remember, during our first few weeks, we talked about two kinds of imagery. One is called pixel-based graphics. The other one was vector-based graphics. So pictures are the ones we did so far. So what do you mean by vector graphics? Now, vector is essentially two positions, two places on our canvas. So let's say I took a tool from Illustrator and I just drew something. Now, when I do that, you see I have three, things here. I have two outer rectangles and some circle in the middle. Now, this I can say is a vector. So if I go and click in the beginning of this one, right? The beginning of this one, I can basically move it wherever I want to. Okay, I can do that. Now, this is a very precise line. It has a starting position, ending position, it has a thickness, it has color, it has shape, everything is there. Only thing is I have no idea about the sizes because I don't know. I can see a white box, but I don't know what it is. Now, when I started Illustrator, I selected a paper size. So that's why I have a paper, white paper here. And since I don't know about any sizing, I need to have some sort of a unit of measure, isn't it? So essentially, a vector-based graphic is all about drawing lines. So you keep drawing lines and then you make your shape, right? Whatever shape you want. Now, the advantage here is that you can very easily scale this guy without damaging anything, right? Without damaging anything, I can scale this whether small or big. When I say damaging, this means, zooming in. See, I can zoom in without losing any. I don't see any pixels. I see perfect lines, right? Perfect lines. So that's the beauty of vector graphics. Everything is mathematically formed. So now coming back to this particular shape, I do have an outline here, but if I go to another tool, I can play along with these little controls and maybe I can convert them into, playable shape. So I'm changing the vector information. Now I can, play along and it's a perfect line. Okay. And still, if I zoom in, I will not lose any quality. I see a perfect line, see? Right, so that's the difference between vector graphics and pixel graphics. Now let's look at the interface here. If you remember how Photoshop screen looked like, this is very similar, isn't it? At least the sections are similar, although the icons they look like same, but there are other additional things as well. Now, before we get to those, remember in Photoshop, we went to, when in the beginning, we went to something called workspace. We have the same thing here. Only thing is we have different workspaces for Illustrator, starting from automation, essentials, essential classic, layout, painting, printing, tracing, typography, and web. Right now, I'm in the painting workspace. So just like how we did it with Photoshop, the workspace organizes the screen for us, isn't it? So now I can try some. Let's say layout. What happens? Yeah, things change. Left-hand side, right-hand side, it's all changed. If I go to workspace and say typography, that is to do with the fonts and text and things like that. Again, it's changed, right? I go back to painting. I'm going to draw some stuff. So I like it this way, right? So that's workspace. Now, if you look at the left-hand side, just like Photoshop, we have selection tools. Then we have, pen and type tool. And this is the first one we used anyway. Remember the shape tool? Then we have ink picker or eyedropper, we call it. We have zoom tool, hand, stuff like that. On the right-hand side, we have, just like Photoshop, various things are there. This one is very similar to Photoshop. This is the layer panel, right? Like Photoshop, Illustrator also has layers. Only thing is, it's not very obvious like Photoshop. So if you look at this, I have this path. I can turn it off. I have this line again. I can turn it off, right? If I don't like it, I can select the layer and delete it. It's gone, right? So, or you can create a new layer and start drawing on that layer if you want. Again, the concept is very similar, all right? So just like on Photoshop, the stop bar changes whenever you select a tool. So if I go and click this one, I see a different set of tools on top now. Okay. If I go select, let's say the type tool. Taking a while because this is a very complex piece of software and it might take lots of resources. So you have to be careful with your computer. If you have a slow computer, you might not be able to install the latest Illustrator. It's a huge one, it's heavy. Same for Photoshop. So then you may need to look at either an older version or a compatible tool set. Now, talking of Illustrator, one of the most popular one in Sri Lanka is CorelDRAW. So then there are others like Inkscape, an open source version also. It doesn't matter. You can use Inkscape, you can use CorelDRAW, you can use Illustrator. The tools are the same. Most of the features are also same, right? It's just that you might get special plugins like filters and whatnot. Some tools might be different to what you're using on another one. Things like that, but generally speaking, it's okay to use any of that, right? So we won't be going into, we might, but generally I try to keep everything as general as possible so that you can pick up any tool and use it. All right. Okay, so when I click on T here, the type tool, I got a different set of drop down, the font name, style, and things like that. Okay. Right, now that's on the introduction to Illustrator. Now remember, in Photoshop, we had two color boxes here. In the Photoshop, we call it foreground color and background color, right? In Illustrator, it's called fill color and the stroke color. Stroke is the outline color. Now, right now, you see a red line here, which means there is no fill color to this guy. So it's not filled, isn't it? So either I can double click here or I can go here and pick up a color there. Right, let me pick up yellow so that we can see the black line. Right. Now, so the black line is the fill, the stroke color, whereas the yellow is the fill color. Now remember, under digital art fundamentals or the elements, we learn about line, right? So here we have the line thickness. Okay, let's increase it to say 5. All right, so that's increasing, right? If I increase it further, say about 10, I see a bigger one, right? Pretty simple, isn't it? So if I want to change the color of the outline, no problem. I can just go to the second box and select the color. So I have not selected the object before adding the color. So now there you are. Okay. So you can select an object, select the fill color, select the outline color, and also change the outline thickness, right? So I also use this pen tool, which is a very powerful tool to draw odd shape like this, right? So we'll get to that later. But for now, before we get into our own shapes, let's explore some other tools available within Illustrator to draw objects, right? So I go here and I go click and hold my mouse. I will see another expanded window here. So I have a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star tool, and also a flare tool. So let's see what these things mean. Now, before we get to that, remember I told you I have a little problem trying to figure out the sizes here because I don't have a unit of measure. So before I do anything, I think I would like to see a ruler, some size indication of this, right? So if you go to view menu, somewhere down here, you see something called rulers, right? And when you expand that, you see show rulers. Now see, when I select here, when I clicked here, what happens? Oh, I get a ruler here and a ruler here. And what is the measurement of the ruler? I don't know. There are some numbers here. Now, if I want to know about the numbers, I can do a right click here and it will show me what the unit of measure is. So right now it is points. Then there is picas, then inches, millimeters, centimeters, and then pixels. Yes, pixel is also possible in Illustrator. Now, I would like to use millimeters because in Sri Lanka we use ISO measurement systems. So now it's millimeters. You could see the change, right? From 0, it went on. Now this is again a 0. So the 0, 0 position, by the way, is up here. This is the 0, 0 position, right? Okay, so now let's try to draw some boxes here. When I go and click and drag, I can draw any box I want. This is a rectangle, isn't it? I can draw any rectangle I like. Now you see, it's automatically taking the yellow and red with that red thickness of 10 because that is what I used last time. So it is reusing what I did last time. Okay. Now, what if I want a perfect box? No problem. All you need to do is click somewhere. Say here. When you click it, it will give us a pop-up menu and say, look, please give me a size. Now it's showing 62.4 something millimeter. All right, let's say I need 50 millimeter and a 50 millimeter, a box. 50 millimeter is 5 centimeters. Okay, so let's see what happens. Oh, I have one, 5 centimeters and 5. So are we sure about that size? Okay, the best thing to do is to take it to the 0 position and then see whether it is 50. Can you see 50? There you are. It is 50 here and a 50 here. Of course, I didn't align it perfectly. I can align perfectly. Now, if I have a issue in moving my mouse, there's always help available. So there is something called snap, right? Snap to grid, snap to pixel, snap to point. Oh, it's already there. So let's say snap to grid. All right, it got snapped, meaning attached automatically. Okay, so the starting position of the box is now perfect. It is 50 here and also 50 here. Okay, and again, if I go and click that box, see, it's again picking up my old information which I typed. So you can keep on picking and create 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter boxes all over the place. There you are. I can change these colors now, right? Right? And it is, each one is 50 by 50 perfectly. Okay. Right. Now, let's look at another shape. Say, next one, rounded rectangle. Okay. Now, what does that mean? A rounded rectangle, as you can see, gives us rounded edges. Yeah. Now, this round, by the way, can be controlled from here, right? Or like before, you can click here and say, look, I need a 50, or let's say centimeters, 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters. That also is possible. You can directly type the unit here. And the corner radius right now, it is 3.5 millimeters. So let's say, okay, I need a 5 millimeter corner radius. Now let's see. There you are. It's a 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter with a 5 millimeter radius. Okay. Or like before, you can draw whatever shape you like. No problem. And the colors are again picking up from the last color palette. Okay. So that's how you draw rounded rectangular boxes. What about the next one? The ellipse tool. Well, very similar. You can click and drag and have all sorts of ellipses, right? If you need a perfect circle, I mean, perfect symmetrical circle, you use the shift key, right? There you are. Or like before, you can type here and give whatever the measurement you want. So say 40 millimeter by 40 millimeter. There you have one, right? So that's how you draw circles. And what about the next one? Oh, this is very interesting. Polygon tool. So the polygon, you can draw things like this, right? And you can rotate and do whatever. Now I like to do the clicking and getting a polygon. Now see, radius, okay, let's say 50 millimeter. How many sides I need? Let's say 8 sides. I get a perfect one here, isn't it? Right? So now that's interesting because you can perfectly get the sizes you want. So let's say 30 millimeter, and I need 10 sides. There you are. Right? So anything you want, of course, you can change the colors. Right? So that's for polygons. Now, if you were carefully looking, you could see when I select it, rather I could click and then give perfect measurements, isn't it? So this is what probably you will be using to get perfect sizes, or you may be looking visually and then, you know, dragging, dropping, resizing according to a certain visual guideline. Right. The next one is another interesting one, the star tool. Right, star tool gives you stars like this. Now, how many spikes I want? That can be controlled in different ways. So if you, for example, let's click and see. Okay, if you click here, it'll, like before, it'll give you a certain measurement. So how many spikes I want? Let's say 8. There. Right, 8. Now this looks like the previous one, right? The polygon. So let me show you another way to get it done. Oops. So when you go and drag, you see, you can, this is the 8 I typed earlier. It gives you a different numbers. Now, in fact, you can use the up arrow and down arrow to increase the spikes, number of spikes, right? Here, you reduce it. Smallest is 3, triangle, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can increase it and then get any size you want. Okay, so that's one. Now there are other keys you can use to play along, like the control key, for example, gives you the height of these spikes, right? Smaller, larger, anything. Okay. So you can get different effects of these spikes. Right. And the last is interesting tool, but I'm yet to find out where I could use it. So let's click and drag. Now it gives you a vector object, but when I take my hand away, see what happens. it gives actually a very complex vector object. It's pretty complex, right? Also, it has certain semi-transparency as well. So if I do a zoom here, you see it's very nice, beautiful, very clear, but it's all vector shape, no pixels, right? No pixels, right? So it's a vector based flare, we call it flare, like a reflection of a light or something like that, right? So those are the preset objects we can create from Illustrator. We didn't use the line for this, but line has a very similar concept as well. So I delete this whole thing. Line, you can have some very accurate lines with this, right? So you can click here and say, right, I want, even the angle can be given. I want, let's say, a 20 centimeter line with the angle of 0. Okay, there I get the line, right? 20 centimeter, a line here. So I can move the line wherever I want, right? I can do that. Okay. Right. Now, let's look at another aspect of these lines. Now, remember, talking of lines, we had thickness, we had color, we had the size, and then we had another one, the kind of the brush you use to draw the line. We call it the texture. You can draw lines with a paintbrush. You can draw lines with coal, various ways. So different brush mediums will give us different kinds of effects. So let me see whether I can change that. So I'm going to go to the, I selected the line, and up here, there are different things I can do with this line, right? So here it says uniform. Let's look at this guy, brush definition, right? If I come down, oh, I see some interesting brushes here. Let's do this one. Now what is that? Oh, it looks like a broken pencil or something. But don't forget, this is vector, right? Very sharp, no pixelation. Okay, which is very important. So now we have a very nice brush stroke going there, isn't it? Okay, how about combining that with some of the things that we deeply use? Let's say I have an ellipse, right? A circle, and then I'm going to apply my brush, that brush that I selected, like this. That's nice, isn't it? Like a wet paint or something. So I could increase the thickness if I want. Right? That's a 4 pixel. That's actually too much. Maybe 2 is better. Right? So that's another way where you can combine the lines with the style of the line. I've been saying this again. This is not pixel, right? They are all very high quality vector shapes. Yeah, they're all vector. Okay. So that's on the line type or line style, we call it. Now, what are the other things we can do? Well, there are all kinds of lines type available. And there are also these things available. Now, let's say, let me, in this case, let me draw a rectangle now. Very large one. And let's try to apply some of the other things. Let's say this guy. What happens when I apply this guy? Right? If you look at the corner here, right, I have a nice, beautiful design. And this is no pixelation again. It's completely vector, isn't it? If I come to the corner, you can see it there. So this is a border. Maybe you can use it to design a card or something, right? What are the other layouts available? What about this guy? Okay, that's a very light brush stroke, right? You might want to have a photograph behind or something. Or you can go to stuff like this that gives us, now this is called the denim border, right? So this is the denim border, right? Or is that all? Not really. This is the advantage of Photoshop. You can expand, you can bring in from outside. There are other designers who are actually doing lots of design like this for us. So if you go here and click this little icon, it shows what else we can do with it, right? Now this one, for example, open brush library. There are so much of libraries available. I'm going to look at borders, right? Under borders, there is dash, decorative, frames, geometric lines, novelty, primitive. So different things. Let me look at frames, because I'm building some frames here, right? These are the frames borders available. Let's see. Wow, a lot. So let's click on the frame and then the frame design. You can check it out like this. Yeah. Wooden one, dark wood, gray colors, right? So again, they are vector, you see, very sharp. You can resize without any trouble. It will be resized to A4 to A2 to A0 to whatever size you want. Even a hoarding alongside the road, you can have a large one, no problem. It won't lose any quality. Let's if you want to add that to the brushes, you can select this one. I'm not going to do that. Let me see what else I can bring in. Decorative banners, scatter, text dividers, image brush. Right, so here's another set of lines, geometric. So you can try some of these things as well. Right. So obviously all of these things might not be suitable for all the work we're doing. So you have this is, by the way, I didn't install anything custom. This is built in additional library. So I'm just using what is already there. Let's try another very important one when it comes to drawing on Illustrator. That is called the grid. Okay, what do you mean by a grid? A grid is something like a paper where, like oil paper, where you use the oil paper on top, and under the oil paper you see a grid, right? So you are using the grid as a guide for you to draw things, or you use a semi-transparency paper. So same story, right? Now, in order to set up the grid, you need to do two things. First, you need to confirm the unit of measure in your system. So I made it millimeters, right? So you need to do that first. Number two, you need to go and set up the grid. So there is a place to set up the grid. So since I've done with my ruler, let's go to the setting up of the grid. So under preferences, guides and grids. Okay, right. Now this is the grid and guide setup. So how do you want it, and what color do you want it, right? And then grid every what millimeter. I would like to have every, let's say, 5 millimeter. And then do you want to subdivide that also? Okay, actually in that case, I'll divide it by 10 millimeters, subdivide by 1. Okay. Meaning every 10 millimeter, I need a thicker grid, thicker line, and divide that into actually 10, and then have a thinner line. Now let's turn it on and see what happens. Now I don't see anything. That is because under weave, I have not turned on. So here, show grid. There you are. Now if I zoom in, I can do some accurate drawing, isn't it? So the thicker line is 1 centimeter line, and each one is divided into 10. All right. So how can I use it for accurate drawing? Well, I need to do one more thing. I need to go here and say snap to grid. Okay, it's already on for me. Otherwise, I will not be able to draw accurately. Right, now I'm going to use the, actually no, I'm going to use the pencil tool, right? Not the line tool, the pencil tool. And here I can start from a corner. Now, because of the snap mode, I don't need to be very accurate about the position I'm going to get into. It will automatically pick it up. Right? I am drawing things very accurate. Oops. See, when I go close, it gets snapped into the location. Okay, so this is a very accurate design, isn't it? Exactly 1 centimeter here, exactly 2 centimeters here. So if you don't want to see the grid now, you can turn that off. Okay, so that's how you draw some accurate drawings with Illustrator. So you use a grid. You have to set up your ruling measurement. Then you need to go to the setting and then set up the grid. And that way you can draw very accurate stuff. Okay, so what else can we do with Photoshop basics? I suppose we looked at a lot of things. Maybe we will do type of fonts, popularly known as fonts, as the last thing for today. So let me turn on or turn off. Okay, it's gone. You can take it in like it's pretty accurate now. Okay, let me use the typography. Right, I'm just typing some things to see what I can do with the fonts, right, or the type. Like any other object, I can also distort it or scale it using the shift key, same treatment, right? Same treatment. I could do that. And what else can I do apart from scaling this here and there? Well, some other cool stuff also. For example, if I select it, since I'm on the font tool, I will be able to change the font name, right? I'm using something called Myriad Pro, but it can be anything. Now here's another one, right? So I could change this. I could change the color, right? If I want, I can even give an outline also, right? Like that. Because it's just another object as far as Illustrator is concerned, but it's a little, I can't say another vector object, but although it is another vector object, it is having a little bit more information than that, because I can come back and change this, right? I can double click here, right? I can change this. That's the beauty. That's the difference between a typical type or the font object and another object, right? And now that's the name of the font. Now there are other styles as well. Now this guy doesn't have. So let's see Myriad. If you go to Myriad, oh, it's the regular one. Let's try Arial. All right. So here we have Arial narrow, and it's very prompting. So I can move, and it shows me the difference. Right, italic, bold. There, right, and of course this is the size, font size. Now right now it's 92. There's a standard sizes. Now let's say 60 point. Okay, so that's 60 point. And then this is the alignment. Now right now it's left align. I can say right center line or right align. Okay. So I guess that's a very good introduction to Illustrator basic tools. So we looked at what we can do with Illustrator, how to create simple objects using existing things available there. We looked at the fill color and the stroke or the outline color. We also looked at brushes that are possible. Then we looked at pencil, rectangle, and things like that. And then we ended up by talking along the lines of the typography or the fonts. So next time, we will see how we can actually align things. Okay, so you might have multiple objects, and then we need to figure out how to align things. So let's discuss that. And so far we were using the existing things to draw. Yeah, so we will use some of those existing tools like a brush tool to draw a beautiful fish. We will also apply something called gradient colors to this fish to get a very rich color combination. So with that, we'll move on to a couple of other objects as well that are all part of your assignment. Okay. I guess you can now practice what we did here today. Any questions?